Hello everybody, welcome to today's topic. How good is C++, C, Java, and Python combination? This video is for anyone who is learning programming languages and they want to learn a second or third language at the same time. So let's get into that. But first, have a look at this clip. Have you looked at my website? The link is given inside the video's description box. So, why would we want to learn so many different languages? Well, the thing is that back in the day when web development was coming out, it was always advisable to learn HTML and Java and PHP or ASP for instance, at the same time. Because in web development, you use many different technologies. So the same can be said for C++, C, Java, and Python combination, because some applications and projects require more than two languages. So if you learn a combination of languages, you can be considered as a developer. And when you're considered as a developer, then you can do even more, and you can be more creative and more advanced than the average developer. So the question to ask in this is that why do we want to learn, or for what purposes, all these languages? So first is, are we designing a system? Is it some kind of a ground up system from zero scratch and building the whole infrastructure of a software, basically, for a big office corporation? So is it that? So you will need several languages to develop the system. Then the second point is, are you making a website? In the website, what are you making as a website? Because there are so many different backends and components of a website that you need a submit form, a survey form, you need a database connection, you need a graphics interface. So there's so many things that go into a website at the same time. So are you designing a website? So therefore you will have to learn Java and combination, for instance, or Django. And the third point is, are you making a video game? A video game basically is a very sophisticated set of software code that makes a game, and popular languages are C++ and C basically. So all these considerations have to take into place, and you have to somehow get into the mode of mix and matching languages. And that's why it is better to design with multiple knowledge of languages. And the last one is, are you making a basic word processor? And in a word processor, you just need a basic C++ and that's about it. And you don't need another language unless you're putting a really advanced word processor like Microsoft 2020 Word application. So it is always advisable to learn as much languages as possible so that you can finish the job given. But at the same time, no answer can be meaningful without specific use case. So you have to take into consideration what is the use case. How good is C++ and C, Java, and Python together for a software system? So let's get back to the first point, that you're designing a system. You really need to know what your system is going to be used for in the first place. But in general, you want to use a few languages as possible. So you don't want to use like 20 different languages for doing the same thing. You want to use just maybe 2 or 3 at the most, to keep life simple. Because if you make a complicated, articulated software platform, then you will need as many people to work on it. So if you just have like 3 or 4 languages and a few people, then you're using it efficiently, basically. Of course, this isn't the case. In the case of, for example, we're going to discuss now, Google Maps. Now, as you know, Google Maps, you have on your mobile phone, it's a map tracking software. So it's a very highly integrated uh, system. Google Maps is a web application, but there's an app version as well, like a mobile app for keeping the argument's sake. The front end is JavaScript, as most web apps. The back end is C++. So you have a combination of JavaScript and C++. Now, I didn't know that it was C++ was used in writing Google Maps. Interesting. You learn something new every day. The front end has to be JavaScript. Right now, it is the de facto standard for interactive web pages. It uses AJAX for data acquisition. C++ is used on the back end because web apps are necessarily broken down into a front end and a back end. So they divide a front end and the back end. Well, if you want to get more into this terminology, what does the front end and what does the back end mean? If you go like 22 decades ago, they had a term called client server. So the client was the customer, server was the host computer. And the same thing can be said for front end and back end. And that's how, to give a definition. It doesn't really hurt two different languages on each end. They could have easily used Java or C# on the back end, except they couldn't. Google Maps uses an enormous amount of data. Throughput is critical to delivering acceptable performance. So yeah, Google Maps is like processing data on the go, and you need something that can handle a lot of data at the same time. Therefore, they had to use C++ despite the fact that Google Maps evolved from an earlier C++ desktop application. Google uses C++ in the backend for breakneck speed. So, we see that using different languages are often necessary, and which language is chosen is driven by requirements. Google Maps needed speed, so what do you do for speed? We all know C++ is the best solution, and C++ is faster than Java and C#. So they use C++. Pretty wise choice. So why doesn't every website use C++ on the back end if it's the fastest? Because it's much harder to maintain or make changes to. It's not impossible, but both Java and C# are much cleaner object-oriented languages. And as far as that goes, Kotlin is even better, but that's another topic for another day. As we saw before, websites often have a back end and a front end, which are separated. They can communicate with each other, but they don't have to be in the same language to do this. Often, they use language agnostic. Language to do this, JSON is a common language, which is actually a subset of JavaScript. But Java and C# can understand it. So JSON is pretty popular these days, and which is a derivation of JavaScript. The front end is what the user sees in a web browser in our case. The back end is a cloud. So the cloud, so the front end is what, like I said, like the customer sees. And the back end is the cloud, which goes up in the cloud, in the internet. Once you get the back end, however, you generally want as few languages as possible. Communication languages is often troublesome, so something you normally want to avoid. So that's what I mean. The fewer languages you use, the better and the simpler your application will be. And the more languages you use, then it's going to be like, more complicated and more articulated and more complex piece of code. If you want to decode it, then you have to really sit down. But if you use just one or two languages, it's much, much better. Plus, if you have developers working on a system, making them jump between languages all the time is a pain. That's true, straight up, because you have to switch back and forth between platforms. It's an unnecessary one. But there might be cases where it makes sense, only in certain exceptions. some parts of the software code. For example, say you have a website where users can download packages of photos. Well, we call it photo down. Well, photo down is a term, when you are sending photos, downloading photos, and it decrunches them into a small file, and then you get it on your computer. After they select photos they want, they'll be packaged up and uploaded to the user. Clearly, this photo down user has eclectic taste. Have a look at this image. The backend of photo down is in Java. After the user selects their photos, the system has to package them, zip them up, and then upload them to the user. Java can do this, but suppose we already have a Python script that can do this. Python script has been fully debugged and has been used reliably for years. Why not use it instead of writing something from scratch in Java? See, that's the thing. So you have certain languages which are good at doing these encryption and decryption. So the Java system calls the Python script. The Python script chews away at the job in the backend, while the website backend and front end is all ready to do more things while waiting for the packages to be ready to be sent. This use case when using multiple languages makes sense. Java talking to Python isn't seamless, but it's reasonable in this case. Reusing reliable technologies is usually a good idea, and Python can inform the Java system when it's done. There doesn't need to be a great deal of back and forth while the packaging is taking place. So you see, some platforms have the ability to communicate with each other, so it's pretty compatible. But if PhotoDown wants to show the user status of the packaging, this is easily accomplished by having Python script hit a Rust endpoint, Rust, R-E-S-T, with its percentage complete every 250 or 500 milliseconds. Rust is a language agnostic, so it really isn't a big deal. So you have, like I said, you have the main languages, and then you have small languages like Rust or third-party platforms that are ready to do the hardcore part of extreme coding. But let's address the specific technologies mentioned. C and C++. If you already using C++, why would you also use C? This really doesn't make sense. If you're using C++, use C++. There's no reason to implement some of it in C and then some of it in C++. Just use one platform, which is common sense. The stuff you do in C++ doesn't have to be object-oriented or anything. Using C doesn't really buy you anything if you're already using C++. So this is what I mean. You have to choose as the minimum amount of languages, not the maximum number. Because in the end of the day, you have to keep it simple. Because if you start using a lot of different platforms, then you're going to need more people to do the organization of it, or the programming. And that's why a lot of corporations, they just use minimum amount of people to save costs. Otherwise, it becomes a headache for the person managing the whole system. C++ is fast, so it's a good choice for time-critical operations. This is the reason it is used for most video games. You generally are going to get this kind of performance in Python. See, the thing with Python is a data science language. But C++, you can use it for game development. You can use it for operating system. You can use it for hardcore programming. It's very robust language. That's the main point. And now let's get into Java. Java is a good, clean backend language, but Kotlin and C# are both better, but it's not bad choice. It's easy to understand and easy development, clean solution with also. there is a huge number of developers who are familiar with it. So it makes maintenance much easier. Java is one of those languages, it's like if you don't know Java, then you don't know coding. And if you don't know coding, then you're nowhere in the market. So you have to know what the industry language is popular in order to learn more and more and get more business and projects completed. Because if you learn a language which is not popular, nobody wants to hire you at the end of the day. So you need to learn Java at all costs. Python, here we go. It is a data science language. And Python is easy to use. So I'm not going to discuss on that. There are already enough content on Python on my channel. So it's a language if you want to do statistics, if you want to do data science, if you want to do artificial intelligence, then Python is the way to go. And it's the best language for data science, using English syntax to complete the code. So how do they all play together? Well, enough, but if you want to avoid mixing languages, it's all, if at all possible. If your system requires a great deal of back and forth between languages, you might want to look at refactoring it to one language as possible. Hopping from C++ to Java to Python to C++, back to Java, then to Python and C++ and Java is a recipe for disaster. Little bits may be lost and hops, but debugging multiple languages is a huge pain. So like I said, you have to keep it as simple as possible. So in conclusion, you normally want to use as few languages as possible. Hopping between languages is generally a bad idea unless you have a really good reason. But I thought I'd make a video on this because there are a lot of people who are not just learning one language, but they're learning 2, 3, multiple mainstream languages. And I'm going to start videos on my channel in Java as well. So right now I'm covering Python and C++, but soon there will be Java as well. And we will focus on that. Well, as always, if you learned a thing or two, click the like hand icon. If you want to see more of the videos, click the red button. That's all for today. Enjoy this video? Then must have a look at these videos.